Okay, so big news coming out of Cupertino, right? Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, WWDC, it's set for June 9th. And, digging through all the sources, the research, community chatter, it really feels like this year might be different.
That's definitely the vibe from the material we went through. Strong signals pointing towards some pretty fundamental changes, not just, the usual annual updates for the Apple ecosystem.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we've gathered up a bunch of sources. We want to unpack the most compelling rumors, what we might expect to see announced. Our mission here is really to cut through the noise, guide you through these potential shifts, maybe highlight what the sources think is most important, and just help you get a handle on what's likely coming in Apple's next software cycle.
Right. We'll be looking at all that buzz around Apple possibly skipping iOS 19, jumping way ahead to something like iOS 26. And we'll dive into the rumored, massive visual redesign across the system. Big expected moves for Apple Intelligence and Siri, too. Plus some significant under-the-hood changes that developers are watching really closely.
Okay, yeah.
Let's unpack this. So the big headline-grabbing rumor, the one dominating the sources, it's this idea that Apple is planning to bypass iOS 19, completely, and jump straight to iOS 26. This would be for the main iPhone operating system update that we expect in fall 2025.
Whoa, okay, jumping from 18 to 26. That sounds familiar, like Samsung doing the S10 to S20 hop. Is this just marketing from Apple?
Well, that comparison is definitely being made in the sources, yeah. But they also point to maybe deeper strategic reasons. The logic tied to this huge number jump seems to be part of a larger strategy to synchronize all of Apple's operating systems. So iOS, iPadOS, macOS, tvOS, VisionOS, watchOS, get them all under a single year-based naming convention.
Okay, hang on. So if the update comes out late 2025, all those different OCs would get a 26 slapped on the end, like macOS 26, watchOS 26.
Precisely, yeah. All the major OS releases for that late 2025 cycle would be labeled XX26, signifying that the 2026 cycle. The idea is aligning their version numbers based on the year they represent across the board.
Okay, that does sound less random than just picking a big number out of a hat. What strategic goals are the sources saying Apple has for this?
They mention a few key ones. First, cross-platform clarity. It's supposed to end the current confusion, where you've got different OCs with different numbers at the same time. Right now you might have iOS 18, watchOS 12, macOS 15.
Right, yeah. It's hard to know if your iPad is on the same generation as your iPhone just by looking at the numbers.
Exactly. Second is developer efficiency. Sources are suggesting this unified naming might signal a move towards more unified SDKs, the software development kits, the toolboxes developers use. There was even a survey cited in one source suggesting this could potentially lead to a pretty big drop in compatibility testing time, maybe up to 40%.
Wow, a 40% reduction in testing. I mean, if that actually happens, that sounds like a massive win for developers.
It certainly could be, yeah. And the third point is future-proofing. A year-based name, like 26, clearly signals support timelines based on that year. Makes it more transparent for users, for businesses, about how long a software generation will be actively updated.
So for someone just, using their iPhone or iPad day to day, what are the clear upsides? What makes it better for them?
Well, the main one is probably a simplified user experience. It just becomes much easier to understand what version you have across your devices. No need to memorize arbitrary different numbers for each platform.
Yeah, less mental juggling is always good.
It's also noted as being good for enterprise users. IT departments could standardize device and software policies more easily, just based on that clear release year.
Yeah.
And for the accessory ecosystem, manufacturers can optimize their products for specific OS generations more easily when they're all clearly marked by year. Makes sense.
But okay, with any big change like this, there are always downsides, right? Or at least concerns. What are sources flagging there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. One concern is this potential device OS mismatch. It might feel a bit weird. When a new iPhone, let's say a hypothetical iPhone 17, launches in late 2025, but it runs iOS 26, the numbers just don't line up intuitively with the device model anymore.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. iPhone 17 running iOS 26. That'll take some getting used to for sure.
Then there's the potential for documentation nightmares for developers. They'll probably need to go back and retroactively relabel legacy code references in their internal documents, their code comments, anything pointing to older sequentially numbered OS versions.
Oof. That sounds like a huge, kind of tedious job for teams working on established apps.
It could be pretty substantial, yeah.
Oh.
And finally, some sources note a feeling of historical erasure. losing that simple sequential logic of version numbers. Makes archival tracking, understanding the year-to-year evolution of the OS over time, a bit harder.
Right. Okay, so moving beyond just the name, the sources are also talking a lot about a significant visual overhaul. They're even calling it potentially the biggest design change since, what, iOS 7, when everything went flat.
Yes, exactly. The rumor is this is way more than just a subtle refresh. We should anticipate a potentially widespread fresh coat of paint across the whole system interface.
And where's this new look supposedly coming from? What's the inspiration?
Rumors are pointing strongly towards Apple's mixed reality platform, VisionOS, saying it's influencing the interface. Specifically, a new Solarium design language. Details are still a bit fuzzy, but sources describe Solarium as having elements like glass-like translucent menus, real-time light refraction effects, giving this sense of depth and dynamic materiality.
So bringing some of that visually rich, sort of layered feeling from VisionOS over to the iPhone and iPad?
That seems to be the goal, yeah. There's talk of a contextual depth system, where things like tab bars might dynamically adjust their opacity based on the content behind them, or its priority. There's even this fascinating little detail about potential haptic icons, like buttons that could pulse slightly when you touch them. One source even cited a specific patent that could enable this.
Haptic icons. That's interesting. Really leaning into that physical interaction feel. Are there any more practical interface changes, rumored, things you'd notice day to day?
Yes. One widely rumored change that would definitely impact daily use is moving the search bar to the bottom of the screen in many core apps. It would mirror that change Apple made in Safari a few years back. The idea is just to make one-handed use way easier, putting the search field closer to your thumb.
That makes a lot of sense for reachability, especially on the bigger phones. What's the community chatter like about all this design talk?
Well, there's definitely a lot of excitement. For a genuinely refreshed look, some users, some developers feel the current interface has gotten a bit stale after all these years. But there are also concerns. Potential usability impacts from new interaction styles, like where would drop-down menus pop up? Would they mess with reachability? And also the challenge of keeping design consistent across the entire OS, especially thinking about older, maybe less updated core apps. How will they adapt?
Okay, yeah, good point. So shifting gears from the look and feel, the other huge area everyone's focused on is AI, Apple Intelligence, expected to be a major, central theme at WWDC, building on what they've teased before.
Absolutely. The sources make it really clear the goal is to significantly broaden Apple Intelligence integration across iPhones, iPads, Macs this cycle.
And what specific AI enhancements are we likely to see based on these rumors?
Expect major improvements in natural language processing, which should lead to a significantly more intelligent, more responsive Siri. There's strong indication Siri is finally aiming to become a true contextual assistant, one that can actually understand and interact with what's currently on your screen, letting do things based on the content you're looking at.
That's a big one. I mean, people have been waiting years for Siri to really evolve into something genuinely helpful.
Definitely. AI is also expected to be integrated deeply into core apps for features like summarizing emails, automatically generating notes, creating calendar events directly from content you're seeing in Mail or Safari. We should also see more personalized, more proactive user suggestions popping up across the system, too.
And knowing Apple, they're definitely going to put a heavy emphasis on privacy with this AI rollout.
Oh, for sure. They are expected to heavily highlight their privacy approach. Sources mention concepts like a privacy firewall. And they emphasize that a very high percentage, one source cited 92% of AI requests, are planned to be processed right on the device, not sending your data off to the cloud.
Any other specific AI-powered features rumored? Beyond Siri and the core apps?
Yeah, there's some buzz about AI-driven battery management. This would use adaptive power management to predict your usage patterns, optimize battery life more intelligently than it does now. It could potentially include features like precise lock screen charging timers and even personalized battery health coaching based on your specific charging habits.
Battery health coaching. That actually sounds like it could be genuinely useful for making your device last longer.
Right. There's also talk of AI health coaching, potentially drawing on your Apple Watch recovery and sleep data for really personalized recommendations. Some sources even mention possible food tracking integration there.
Interesting. How does this big AI push affect developers, the ones building third-party apps?
Well, new tools are anticipated. Tools that could allow third-party app developers to integrate their own AI features into their apps, potentially leveraging Apple's on-device or private cloud processing for their own apps' capabilities.
So looking at the bigger picture then, Apple really needs to make a splash with AI this year, huh?
Based on the sources, absolutely. Apple really needs to show significant, tangible progress in AI. To address those past criticisms about lagging behind competitors like ChatGPT, Google Assistant, there's definitely skepticism noted in the community chatter we reviewed about whether the ambitious promises made in previous years about AI and Siri will finally be delivered in a meaningful way. This WWDC is really their chance to show they're serious.
Okay, so beyond the flashy new UI and the big push for AI, there are also these significant changes happening under the hood, things that directly impact the people building the apps we use every day, the developers.
That's correct. Yeah, the sources indicate some crucial technical shifts are part of this whole cycle.
What's the key technical change developers really need to be aware of?
Expect the deprecation of several legacy methods within the UI application delegate framework. For developers, deprecation basically means Apple is signaling, hey, this part of the code, it's not the recommended way anymore. And while it might still work for a bit, it could eventually be removed entirely, which can cause app compatibility problems, maybe even get an app rejected from the App Store later on.
So Apple's been trying to move developers away from UI application delegate for a while then.
Yes, they've been actively pushing developers towards the UI scene delegate framework, since iOS 13, actually.
And why is UI scene delegate the better way now? What does it let them do?
What UI Scene Delegate provides really crucial support for modern app structures, especially multi-window layouts, which are essential for iPads and definitely for the Vision Pro. It gives developers more fine-grained control over individual app scenes or windows. And this approach aligns much better with newer Apple frameworks like Swift UI and features like Stage Manager, Apple's multitasking system for iPad and Mac.
So it's really about modernizing how apps handle different screens, different states, particularly as Apple's ecosystem grows beyond just a single screen iPhone.
Exactly that. It's necessary to support the capabilities of iPadOS, macOS, VisionOS more effectively, and provide a more consistent development experience across the whole ecosystem.
What does this mean for developers who are still relying heavily on those older UI application delegate methods? What do they need to do?
They absolutely need to audit their existing code bases, find where those deprecated methods are being used. Then they'll need to migrate that functionality over to the UASC and delegate equivalents and do thorough testing, especially with the upcoming beta software releases.
Sounds like a pretty significant effort for many teams, though probably necessary.
It is, but migrating is crucial for long-term app health compatibility. It's actually part of what some sources hinted at when they mentioned potential documentation nightmares. This large-scale code migration, relabeling legacy references, it ties into the broader OS changes, like that naming convention shift. It all adds to the developer's workload.
Right. And speaking of the ecosystem, it's clearly not just about the iPhone this year. What are the expectations for iPadOS specifically at WWDC?
Sources are calling this WWDC the stage for potentially the most substantial upgrade to iPadOS to date. That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, most substantial to date is bold. What's the main goal behind these supposed iPadOS changes?
The clear goal seems to be making the iPad a significantly more productivity-focused device, positioning it as a stronger, more capable alternative to a MacBook for, a wider range of people and workflows.
And how are they planning to achieve that? What kind of improvements?
Well, expected improvements include significantly enhanced multitasking capabilities, better app window management, really aiming for a more desktop-like experience than we have today. There's also mention of improved file management features and, crucially, support for more advanced professional software tools coming to the iPad platform.
And how does this tie back into that broader ecosystem unification, the 26-cycle naming we talked about?
As we mentioned, macOS, watchOS, tvOS, VisionOS, they're all supposedly part of this unified year-based cycle, starting with that 26 label. So we should be looking for increased cross-platform synergy, things designed to make the whole Apple experience feel more connected.
Like features that feel truly seamless when you're moving between your devices?
Exactly. Sources specifically mention potential enhancements to universal control.
Yeah.
Apple's feature letting you use one keyboard and mouse across multiple Macs and iPads nearby. The rumor is it could be enhanced to potentially allow dragging and dropping files, not just between Mac and iPad, but maybe even between iPhone, Mac, and Vision Pro. Perhaps with better visual cues like magnetic alignment to make that handoff feel even more natural.
So it's not just about updating each OS on its own, but making the interaction between all your Apple devices smoother, more powerful.
Precisely. The vision seems to be this truly interconnected computing environment. And these new operating systems, all labeled for the 2026 cycle, are rumored for release sometime in Q3 2025.
Okay, so with all these potential changes hitting, supposedly, next fall, let's just quickly recap what this deep dive has kind of surfaced from the sources. We've covered the potential leap to iOS 26, that unified year-based naming across all platforms, the rumored massive UI overhaul drawing from VisionOS, maybe the new Solarium design language, the expected big push for Apple Intelligence, a significantly smarter, more contextual Siri. We've also looked at those crucial under-the-hood shifts for developers deprecating legacy frameworks, and significant updates expected for iPadOS and the broader interconnected ecosystem.
Yeah, WWDC 2025 is absolutely shaping up to be a really pivotal moment for Apple. It feels like they're aiming to lay out a compelling future vision, show real AI progress to maybe counter some past criticisms, and truly deliver on their hardware's potential by revamping the software experience across the entire board. It feels less like just another annual update and more like a carefully orchestrated strategic evolution of their whole platform.
It definitely involves some bold moves. I mean, that dramatic naming jump, the rumored big UI redesign, but it's coupled with that ongoing complex challenge of actually delivering on ambitious AI promises and making sure developers can keep up with these fundamental framework shifts.
It's a picture of ambition meeting technical reality, really, aiming to redefine what the Apple ecosystem is capable of doing.
So what does this all mean then? Given the rumored scale of these changes, I mean, renaming operating systems years into the future, fundamentally changing how apps are built, how interfaces look and feel across all the devices, are we just witnessing Apple trying to, reinvigorate their established platforms with some big annual updates? Or is this something more? Are they actually attempting to redefine what their entire interconnected ecosystem means for the future of personal computing, especially in this kind of post-smartphone, multi-device world we're
Subscribe to
moving into?
Technova for more
What potential
podcasts
feature or
and like
change
this
stands out
video if
most
you
to you
enjoyed
from
it.
everything we've discussed today?